70s, the only way to explore narrative was to go either performance or theater. And so I moved into performance and theater, and that sort of informed all of what I do. There's a element where I start off with a scene, and then place pieces of business within that scene. And so my kind of struggle is to find the right piece of business to explore that particular scene. I don't think this would be something that you would be able to take out of your house if it were burning, but I would just say that the tragedy of losing your house would probably overwhelm you anyway. So, yes, take Wes's stuff, but also consider maybe this would be good for insulation. I mean, if you had enough, large enough room. My work, if you saw the last show I had here, was all about cubicles and about the geometry of those small little office hovels that we worked in. As putting myself through and surviving in New York City, the only job that I was ever qualified for was punching numbers. And so I was a bookkeeper. And I got fired from every job I had where a typical artist would actually flourish. So I couldn't build walls, I couldn't do electricity, and I couldn't do plumbing. So that was, out of my, range of abilities. So I did bookkeeping, and in that, I found the perfect artist job. Everything's in past tense, and everything has to go to zero. And so when I left the job, and I was able to do my work. From that series, I learned about erasing and about clean edges. And after about 2 years of working that series, and I have a catalog that sort of documents both of these series, I decided that my hand needed a rest from that kind of really intense work. I don't know how Wes does it. I mean, his strokes are so exact and so beautifully put down. Mine are very theatrical. And I've been slowly making my work larger and larger. I promised the gallery that I would start getting it smaller and smaller. Although I have taken measurements of these walls, so I have done 18 feet by 10-foot drawings, life-size individuals, in an attempt to kind of recreate the setting. But I kind of view my work right from the start as goofy existentialism. For me, the characters are right out of a Buster Keaton movie, and the settings are right out of a Franz Kafka novel. And that combination of real angst with just Looney Tunes is sort of what I work with. So these figures are the result of what happens when you're in a kind of job that's basically just pushing numbers and non-thinking, and you start sort of seeing in the sides of your peripheral these dreams that pop in. And I was telling everybody about my sketching process. So I have my little sketchbook where I set up my scenes, and what I've noticed is there are points at which, and I don't know if there's any in here, where I fall asleep. And the only reason why I know I fall asleep is all the ink starts sort of, ballooning on my pieces. And actually, I kind of look for that. I mean, drawing is so relaxing to me, at least in this level, that in the moment where I wake up is where the image pops in. It's really quick, but I was trying to sort of get to that, where you're drawing something very specific, you fall asleep, you wake up, and something else has happened to it. And for me, the only way I was able to remain sane in any kind of office job were those, sort of daydreams that pop in when you least expect it. So this is just a result of getting back to my theater and, and the love of the stroke. If there's anything that links us, Wes and I, is our love of our story, that open-ended story, but also the love of the mark. And for all of my works, there's, a kind of, the mark is basically just a way of distinguishing one form to the other. It's a way of creating a context for objects, but it's also just the pure love of just doing kind of crazy stuff. I mean, a tic-tac-toe thing in there, I just worked this morning. And I am kind of notorious. It's one of the good reasons for me being in Little Rock, because if I were here, I'd be coming up to your places. If you ever have a, good taste of my works, I'd be working it, And I always guarantee my work, I mean, I will always be available as far as I can to touch it up, if something happens. So, all of these works are a result of working the hook, trying to find that essence to what I'm doing, to play with it. And as you notice, there's a couple of firsts in these two shows. Wes has gone to oil paint, and I actually have gone to color. Because up until this point, I have not worked in color. I viewed it as something that I wanted to avoid. I mean, I work in charcoal. The only tonality or any kind of color I do is with coffee to create a kind of warm sensibility. And to put in color to me before this series was somehow to lessen it. The questions that you deal with color are much more broad. I mean, is it symbolic or is it just there to hold a position? Why did you select this color as opposed to another? And those kind of questions aren't as interesting to me as the story that I'm developing. But in this work, the need to go to color was a way of sort of exploring the narrative to create some kind of different type of marks. And you notice that most of the color that I use is straight out of the tube. I mean, I am, well, except for that paint. For the most part, I'm using color like I use my dark and light. It's a way of distinguishing form, as a way of kind of making the tonalities work a little better. So I'm going to the dark side slowly. I mean, who knows, I may go multicolor in the next series, but it's always sort of a journey, and I appreciate you coming to take a look at both of our journeys. So, are there any questions? Yeah.
Can you talk about this one? I can't, like, what's going on in the sky up there?
Yeah, it's called ladders. Originally, there was a series of ladders. You can make them out in the pedamente. That is the result of my reworking. Some of the ladders are there. But I live in Little Rock, and these are basically the suburb that I live in. And we had a number of ice storms. You can see the trees are pretty broken. And linemen would come in to take care of the trees. And so this is sort of part of that, but I also was interested in that dream quality and the idea of how strange it would be if suddenly I woke up and saw somebody kind of, walking or floating in the scene. So for me, the ladders were a kind of jumping off point, creating an interesting texture on the piece, but also a way of contrasting these really barren trees and the verticality of the figure that's walking through.
So where's the ladder?
There's a number of them. They're indicated.
Oh, I see.
Through here and through here, and all the way through. And originally it wasn't going to have a figure in it, but I need my Buster Keaton. I need my character in there to kind of hold me down a little bit. It's one of the first ones. The color in there is pastel. It's a purple that I just detest, And in working it, it forced me to play with color that I hadn't been ever worked with before. I had bought, when I first got to Little Rock in 1986, a bunch of Winsor Newton paint. And once I started these works, I had to dig it out. So I actually have not purchased any paint for this. It's all old, archaic paint. But at any rate, I like the kind of contrast that occurs in there. And those colors help to kind of get me out of my complacency of just purely, a tonal structure.
Do the ladders have anything to do with color?
Yeah, that and other things. I like the fact that these are, in some sense, a stage in which something could happen. And I'm constantly putting in pieces of business so these images take on a kind of new narrative. And the ladders were there as a first part because of not only their relationship to the trees, but also because there is that reference. I did a piece called Jacob's Ladder back in 2001. In this case, though, the ladders had to go in order to get the individual in that space. But one of the things that I love about drawing is that you can tell all of the work and thinking that goes into it, unlike, say, finished paintings where a lot of the concealment occurs. For me, having figures like there's a figure running over here that was taken out, another figure over here, and another figure over here before I resolve the narrative. In the piece over there called Post, there's a number of figures that are flying off in that mist. So I don't finish a work until I resolve some of the issues, and if the hook stays with me, then the drawing survives. Most of these drawings are the result of destroyed drawings under them, and for a long time that's all I kind of produced, was destroy drawings. And one of these days when I am feeling really good about those destroyed drawings, I'll force the Upland Del Rio Gallery to show them, and all you'll see is just the result of my erasures. And just the pediment. What's that?
Oh, really?
Yeah. That, and they'll be just 18 foot by 10 feet, you won't even be.
So I think we're good then.
Good.
Thank you so much. Please